it will be a good idea to have the same seminar on the same topics, but to be held by the Embassy of the Philippines in Jakarta, and it will be called the soft drink business in Indonesia. I think.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It will be good because remember, yeah, I think just giving insights on it while we're waiting. This is only, we're talking only pa.
Yeah.
Davao and Manado are already sister cities. Yeah, there is already that formal agreement with the two. So on the LGU side, we have that agreement. I think on the business side, there should be that interaction, to determine who will be the key stakeholders that will get involved, so that there will be continuity, and the type of products. I believe if we are only talking about probably coconut or maybe other agri products, there will be that good of exchange of products and services. I think if we involve the local businesses in Davao and also in Manado and that chamber, I think it has to start from that.
You're correct. Yeah. The embassy deems this issue serious, and that's why last year we have asked a reputable think tank institution in the Philippines to make or to write a research for us. I think it will be timely if I could share the results of their research with all of you gentlemen. One of the recommendations put forward by the institution is that there should be more promotional events for the Philippines products. According to the research, so far there are too many emphasize on the promotion only for they are directed only or directed mostly to the Philippines who live in Indonesia. That's one of the recommendations put forward by the research. Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to inform you that our charge d'affaires is already here with us. Okay, so yeah, all right.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Pak.
Selamat pagi, Pak Kwai. Good morning, Pak Kwai.
Good morning.
Good morning, Pak Widya.
We already had a very inspiring discussion, Pak Widya.
I'm listening.
We can only speak from the private sector community here in Indonesia because we cannot speak for the Philippine Embassy. But yes, you're right. I think the promotion and the angle should be that it shouldn't cater to the Filipinos in Indonesia because we're really very few in Indonesia compared to our presence in other countries. Now, this is only one of the few countries in the world where Philippine products can really cater to the general population and not to the overseas Filipino workers. And there have been case studies on that. For example, on a simple product like Extraderm, they used to cater only to Filipinos living abroad. But when they arrived in Indonesia, they were surprised that it was a general population that bought their products. So it's the consumer market of Indonesia that they should target and not the Filipinos in Indonesia only. Plus, Roro is very much a big part of the BIMP IAGA. And I think BIMP IAGA is also being focused on by Mindanao and Manado.
Thanks, Mark, for your insights. I'm sure you will you will give us more I should say more contributions for our next discussion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should begin the meeting this morning, and because everyone is here and all the speakers are already with us, as well as the participants. So far we have 53 persons joining this meeting, including, of course, the speakers. I will give the floor to my colleague, Francisca. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Francisca, let's start.
Okay, thank you, Pak Prabowo. We start the virtual seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Shalom. May peace be upon us all. Good morning, Magandang Umaga everyone. Selamat pagi and welcome to today's virtual seminar, Ease of Doing Business in the Philippines. Before we started, I'd like to go over a few items. First, please make sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And second, all participants will have the opportunity to submit questions to the speakers by typing your questions into the chat box in Zoom. And you may send in your questions at any time during the presentations. Later, we will collect these and address them during the discussion sessions at the end of the speaker's presentations. And now, to begin the seminar, we are pleased to have Charge of the Affairs of the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Widya Ramanto, to deliver his opening remarks. Sir, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Francisca. Undersecretary Tony Eduardo Bringas, Anti-Red Tape Authority, all speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon us all. Selamat pagi, Magandang Umaga. Welcome to all participants today virtual seminar, Ease of Doing Business in the Philippines. Although we could not meet in person, it is fortunate that we could still see each other and connect through video conference and move on with business meeting and gathering as usual. We hold this virtual seminar hoping that this event will first enhance the knowledge of Indonesian entrepreneurs on the business environment in the Philippines, thus increasing their interest to collaborate with the Philippines entrepreneurs and company owners. Second, to strengthen and sustain bilateral trade relations between our two countries. And third, to build business networking. Considering the current economic profile of the Philippines today as one of the most dynamic economies in the Asia-Pacific region, Indonesia would like to tackle this positive outlook into a discussion with the Philippines business sectors and relevant stakeholders. To strengthen the connection in terms of business collaboration and partnership. Moreover, the Philippines has recently achieved the advantage of a global value chain that has access to various countries in the world. With its economic driven by strong consumer demand and public investment, Indonesia sees this scenario as a potential business opportunity to seize. Furthermore, COVID-19 in both Indonesia and the Philippines has shown a decreasing trend. We see this an encouraging sign that health protocol and the measurement implied by both governments have finally paid off. This is the time to turn on the engine loader and recover the economy. Allow me to express my sincere appreciation to our today's speakers. First, Attorney Eduardo Bringas, Undersecretary Anti-Red Tape Authority, Mr. Antonio Meliton Pascual, Chief Custom Operation Officer, Bureau of Customs, Mr. Antonio Capati, Chairman, Philippines Business Club Indonesia, and my colleague, Mr. Lazuardi Nasution, Trade Attaché, Indonesian Embassy in Manila. I believe those speakers' expertise will be valuable support for the participants of the virtual seminar. I would also convey my gratitude to the moderator of this event, Mr. Mark Castro, Secretary General of the Philippines Business Club Indonesia. With your expertise, Mr. Castro, on the know-how of business in Indonesia and the Philippines, we are confident that you can help us make this event successful and fruitful through your knowledge of the subject and your skill to facilitate. Finally, I will end my remark here. Thank you very much for your kind attention and have a vibrant and fruitful discussion. Selamat siang. Thank you very much. Maraming selamat.
Yes, thank you very much, Pak Widya, for the opening remarks. And before we move to the main programs, we will have photo sessions together. Please turn on your camera because we're going to make a screenshot. Yes. All right, we have three pages over here. Please turn on your camera. Okay, page 1, smile. Move to second page. All right, 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, the last page, 1, 2, 3, smile. All right, I think we have captured everything. All right, yes, I'm moving on. It is my pleasure to introduce our Minister Counselor for Economy, Bapak Kusuma Pradopo, to introduce the speakers. Sir, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Francisca. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Shalom. May peace be upon us all. Good morning, magandang umaga, everyone. Welcome to the virtual seminar in Ease of Doing Business in the Philippines. I wish to reiterate before the speakers present their presentation that the objectives of this virtual event are firstly to enhance the knowledge of the Indonesian entrepreneurs on the business environment in the Philippines, thus increasing their interest to collaborate with Philippine entrepreneurs and company owners. Secondly, is to strengthen and sustain bilateral trade relations between our two countries. And lastly, to build business networking. And in order to achieve those objectives, we have 4 experts this morning. So now, for our first speaker, let us please welcome Attorney Eduardo V. Bringas, Undersecretary, Anti-Red Tape Authority. Deputy Director General Eduardo V. Bringas took up divinity studies at Asian Theological Seminary and graduated in March 1994. In October of the same year, he graduated at the University of Santo Tomas College of Law. He was appointed as Executive Director of the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission under the Office of the President in February 2018. On February 6, 2020, he was appointed as Deputy Director General at the Anti-Red Tape Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, the Undersecretary Attorney V. Bringas. Sir, the screen is yours.
Good morning, Honorable Widja Ramanto, the Charge Affairs of the Indonesian Embassy. Yes, Mr. Honorable Kusuma Padopo of the Economic Section, Indonesian Embassy, and also Mr. Laswardi Nasuchon, Trade Attaché of the Embassy of Indonesia. Mr. Antonio Capati, Chairman, Philippine Business Club of Indonesia. Mr. Antonio Meliton Pascual, Chief Customs Operating Officer, Bureau of Customs, and our moderator, Mr. Mark Castro. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing more descriptive of what is the ease of doing business, but what we are doing right now. You see, I had an emergency meeting, and now I am mobile, and yet we're having this virtual seminar. But allow me to just give you a run through or brief preview of what is the ease of doing business in the Philippines. The ease of doing business law, or RA 11032, is the law that governs the Anti-Red Tape Authority. It is actually the law that created the Anti-Red Tape Authority. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, in the 2020 State of the Nation Address of the Philippines, the President said that we need to adjust and adopt a paperless type business and work performance. We need e-governance to provide our people with the services that they need from the comfort of their homes or workplaces. It will enable our bureaucracy to better transition into a new normal and cut or minimize red tape. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The President continued on and instructed the DILG, DBM, and the Anti-Red Tape Authority, along with all agencies and instrumentalities of government, to make all possible services available online. Now, the ease of doing business law, one of the role of the Anti-Red Tape Authority is to propagate the digital transformation. The one in charge of digitalization is the DICT, the Department of Information and Technology Communication and Technology. Next slide, please. Now, in the 3-point socio-economic agenda of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte's administration, the third is the increase of competitiveness and the ease of doing business. Next slide, please. Now, RA 11032 is a game changer. It became law on June 17, 2018. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, the implementing rules and regulations became effective on August 4, 2019. Next slide, please. Now, there are two main mandates for ARTA. It is the empowerment, which pertains to streamlining and the engineering and other courses that may help the government agencies to streamline their processes, and also the enforcement, which is penalizing the erring government officials. Next slide, please. And that's next slide, please. As Deputy Director General of ARTA for legal, I am in charge on the enforcement function. Now, in a nutshell, RA 1103 to promote good regulatory practices, that is the empowerment function, setting standards and prescribe processing time that will fall within the enforcement function. Again, government technology, as I said earlier, ARTA is in the forefront of digital transformation, and the engineering of government systems and procedures. This also pertains to the empowerment function of ARTA. Next slide, please. There's a bit of lull on the internet at any rate. Next slide, please. The silent features of the law are letter A, coverage, the prescribed processing time, automatic approval, re-engineering, limitations of signatories, citizens charter, zero contact policy, business one-stop shop, and two-strike policy. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. While waiting for the slide to present okay, thank you. The coverage of our law is practically all government agencies under the executive branch of the Philippines. The executive branch pertain to national government agencies, to the GOCC, so government-owned or controlled corporation, and the LGUs or local government units, and and other agencies. No? What are excluded are as follows: of course, the judiciary, the Congress, and the other agencies, commissions created under the Constitution of the Philippines. Next slide, please. Now, the prescribed processing time. Under the law, there's a processing time of 3/7/20. 3 days for simple transaction, complex transaction, 7 days, and 20 days for highly technical transaction. Now, when will this be reckoned? After the submission of the complete documents and payment of all the processing fees and other charges. Once those have been submitted, then the agency is, if it is a simple transaction, required to finish the transaction within 3 days. If it is complex, 7 days. And again, if it is highly technical, 20 days. Next slide, please. Now, there will be the law also provides for extended processing time of the same periods, 3/7/20, but the requirement here is that the government employee or official in charge should inform the applicant of the delay and give the justification thereof. Next slide, please. Now, there are periods under the special laws, and we honor also that period under the special laws provided for the processing time. The government agency is allowed to observe the processing time longer than 3/7/20 if there's a special law. Next slide, please. Okay, with regard to the Sanggunian, or Sanggunian is actually the council of the local governments. If the application or request will have to go to the Sangguniang, the period is 45 days and extendable for another 20 days. Next slide, please. Now, with regard to the clearance and certificates issued by the Bureau of Fire Protection, we have the periods of 7 days for fire safety evaluation, 7 working days to fire safety inspection certificates, and 20 working days, extendable again once for another 20 days for the certification of fire incidents for fire insurance. Now, you would notice that the extension is only for the same period, no? And we are talking about the working days, not calendar days. So next slide, please. With regard to the interconnectivity of infrastructure development, the total processing time to be issued from the barangay is 7 working days. Total of 7 working days also for the LGUs and 7 working days for national government agencies. This period is non-extendable of 30 days when the approval of the local legislative body is necessary. So if it pertains to interconnectivity infrastructure, it is there's a shorter period. For ordinary transactions, it is 45 days for the local legislative body, but insofar as interconnectivity is concerned, it requires 20 days. Next slide, please. Okay, suspension of a prescribed process time is allowed if there's a force majeure. Next slide, please. Now, this is one of the innovative provisions of the law. We have a provision of automatic approval. As I stated earlier, when all the documents have been submitted and all the fees have been paid, then the period of either 3, 7, 20 will already run. And after that, if the agency still would not act on it, they need just to file a complaint with the Anti-Red Tape Authority and stating that they have all completed all the requirements. Now, what our agency will do is to issue a declaration of completeness, because the provision of automatic approval is already provided for by law. So we just determine whether or not the documents and the payments have been paid, and based on the citizen charter of the agency that is being complained of. And we will discuss later about the citizenship charter. Next slide, please. Okay, the re-engineering of systems and procedures. Now, under the law, even prior to the enactment of the law, all agencies of government under the executive branch are required to check whether or not there is a need for them to re-engineer the processes. Now, re-engineering approach would be a whole of governments, to review and repeal outdated laws and regulations that create undue regulatory burden. They have to undergo the regulatory impact assessment. We have issued ARTA MC number 2021-09, the issuance of the whole of government re-engineering manual. And the re-engineering manual is will support the whole of government approach in streamlining Philippine government systems and procedures in delivering public service. Next slide, please. Now, one of the issues also that causes red tape is the signatories to a particular, let's say, permit or license that is being issued. So we have, under the law, limited signatories to a maximum of 3 officers. So that in case of the authorized signatory is unofficial business or official leave, then the alternate shall be designated as the signatory. Next slide, please. Yes, next slide, please. Yes. Now, I mentioned earlier about the Citizens Charter. Basically, a Citizens Charter is like a menu in a restaurant where the prices are there, what they serve, and also, if you notice in some restaurants, the server will have a nameplate. So the Citizens Charter is an official document that communicates the service standards or services provided to the citizen by the government agency, the step-by-step procedure for availing service, and the responsible person, the documents needed to be submitted, and the fees to be paid. As to form, the information billboard is also required in the agency. A location of posting is also required in the main entrance, in the respective government websites, published materials written either in English, Filipino, or in the local dialect. The whole purpose is establishing accountability and recognizing good performance. Currently, the ARTA has issued 627 notices of warning to non-compliant agencies and LGUs. No? Now, this notices of warning has been issued by my office. Next slide, please. Now, again, another innovative provision is the zero contact policy. So that all government agencies, including local government units, shall adopt a zero contact policy. Interactions that are strictly necessary are allowed. For example, payment of application of fees, complex or highly technical transaction, recording with prior consent, and documented notice of meetings. Now, in advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are now gearing towards, as I said, the digitalization of all transactions, and ARTA has been instructed by the president to make sure that the government services are made available from the comfort of the homes of the transacting public. And in this regard, we are now having a headway with the infrastructures and also with regard to the automation of the agencies, interconnectivity and interoperable platforms. Next slide, please. Also, another provision is the Business One-Stop Shop. All local government units are required to set up their Business One-Stop Shop, or what they call the BOSS, which shall serve as a business permitting and licensing system that will receive and process application for permits, licenses, certifications, and authorizations. The electronic Business One-Stop Shop is also provided under the law, and the LGUs, or local government units, are required to have their electronic Business One-Stop Shop within 3 years upon the effectivity of the law. As stated earlier, the law took effect last June 2018, and the 3-day period has already expired last June this year, and we have issued currently 583 notices of warning to non-compliant agencies and LGUs. Now, what happens if they also fail another the same if they still have not complied? Now, that will be part of the enforcement function. Then we file the necessary cases in the appropriate agencies of government, like, for example, the Office of the Ombudsman, or with the Civil Service Commission, or even with the Sanggunians, if it pertains to the elected officials. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the single or unified application form. Now, new applications for business permits and business renewals are mandated to have a single or unified application form. It consolidates all information of the applicant or requesting party by various local government departments, such as, but not limited to, the local taxes and clearances, building clearance, sanitary permits, zoning clearance, fire clearance, from the Bureau of Fire Protection and other LGU-specific requirements. Next slide, please. Now, the barangay clearances are now required to be issued or correct from the particular city or municipality. All the barangay would require is that they can have the collections be remitted to their respective barangays. Next slide, please. Now, as to the still life procedures, no, for FSEC, FSIC, and the Certificate of Fire Incidents for fire insurance, the Bureau of Fire Protection collocate with the Business One-Stop Shop on the matter. No? The BFP is also to develop and adopt an online electronic mechanism. Next slide, please. Now, what happens if an agency has failed to comply with the ease of doing business law? Well, we hold responsible under the law the head of the agency, so that it is a matter of what we call in law as respondeat superior, no? Meaning that it is the responsibility of the head of the agency if there is non-compliance with the law. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, under the two-strike policy, when we file cases against erring officials or employee, the first offense will be an administrative case, which will have a 6 months suspension as penalty. Now, the second offense, it partakes the nature of a criminal offense, and the penalty is 1 year to 6 years imprisonment or a fine of 500,000 to 2 million pesos. No, so that if the same offense already committed by the same official, then he will be subject to a criminal liability. And among those penalties also includes the disqualification from holding public office, forfeiture of retirement benefits, and imprisonment. So this is a very stiff penalty. So that the government officials and employees are actually being told that you should keep up and should be able to perform, make sure to perform and comply with the provisions of the ease of doing business law. Otherwise, your heads will be chopped, so to speak. Now, as I stated earlier, there are two main functions of ARTA: the ease of doing the enforcement and the empowerment function. Now, most of the complainants actually do not want to be hassled with the filing of complaints. All they want is just to have whatever permit or license or authorization or certification, just to get it immediately. So that what we actually do is that we file, when a complaint is filed before us, we refer it to the agency first to find ways to be able to settle the matter amicably. Now, if the complainant is satisfied, then we already serve the purpose of the law. At the same time, we are applying the whole of government approach because you see, ARTA would be like Mr. Heckler, Mr. Hyde. If on one side we are trying to empower an agency, at the same time, on the other side we're still enforcing filing cases against them. So that to be able to have a whole of government approach and to have them willingly cooperate with us, we still apply the empowerment function, although we are in the enforcement mode already. Next slide, please. Now, the violations under the Act are as follows. The refusal to accept application, additional requirements not in the Citizens Charter, the additional cost in the Citizens Charter, failure to give the written notice of disapproval, the failure to render services within the prescribed processing time, the failure to attend to applicants prior to the end of the working hours or during lunch break, failure to or refusal to issue official receipt, and letter H will be the fixing or collusion with fixers. Now, insofar as these violations are concerned, the two-strike policy that was mentioned earlier pertains to letters A to G. And with regard to letter H, this is a one-strike policy. If you are found, if you are caught, for example, colluding with the fixers or actually participates or actually is engaged in the fixing, then it already carries with it a criminal penalty. Next slide, please. We can pass. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, our Director General, Jeremiah Behlica, has introduced the Nehemiah Program, or the National Effort for the Harmonization of Efficiency Measures of Interrelated Agencies. The Nehemiah Program is a sectoral-based interagency streamlining effort that takes as its consideration the speeding up of and realization of socio-economic agenda of the Duterte administration. The program has a defined period and clear targets, which are 52% reduction of time, cost, requirements, and or procedures within 52 weeks for the key sectors of the society in 2020. For its first year, ARTA and its partner agencies will focus on 5 sectors. Next slide, please. Now, insofar as the sectors I mentioned earlier, 5 sectors, we have the telco, connectivity, the logistics, food and pharma, socialized housing, and construction permits. Now, with regard to the telco, there's this is already being implemented. There's also already a JMC and supplemental JMC or joint memorandum circular adopting the SIM-line processes. So it from 30 permits, it went down to 8, from requirements 86 to 35, and from days 241 to 16 days. Now, insofar as the logistics is concerned, we have 209 down to 24, and the days were 271 to 35. The food and pharma is from 28 to 9, requirements 41 to 12, and days 63 to 21. Now, socialized housing, which I was in charge, from 11 to 1 step, and from 475 days to 108. Now, the construction permit is 22 to 1 to 3, and from 120 days down to either 3, 7, and 20 times, of course, 3, because each permit would require the 3 or steps would require a 1 transaction, which will be either 3, 7, and 20. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now, how to file complaints? Just simply file it, complaints on ARTA, and or visit our website, and or you can go directly to our office. But we have introduced recently, and we have issued on September 6th and published on September 9, the new rules of complaints handling, automated complaints handling, meaning that we will be requiring all complaints to be done online, either through the social media or through our platform. We had already a citizens application, citizens service application where complaints can be filed, and this is the first that I think of that complaints are, and the filing of complaints and the answer of the respondents are done automatically. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much for having us.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. You say, Eduardo, despite the fact that you are actually on the road.
Yes,
it's impressive. It's impressive. I was about to ask you, what is your communication provider? Because I must say it's an excellent connection.
Yeah. My line is Globe. I'm using Globe. I'm not advertising, but
okay.
But I'm using my mobile phone. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And I could see that your team also behind you. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, God bless.
To the audience, yes, thank you very much, sir. Have a safe trip. To the audiences, if you have questions from the speaker's presentation, please put them in the chat box and we will answer some of them, of course, during the question and answer at the end. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to our speaker, our second speaker, which is it's Colonel Meliton T. Pascual, the Chief Custom Operations Officer of the Bureau of Customs. Colonel Pascual has been serving in the Bureau for more than 3 decades. He is a well-known trainer among the resource speakers in the Bureau of Customs Training Division. He mainly discusses methods of valuation, trade facilitation, and customs procedures. In addition to this, Colonel Pascual is considered as one of the members for the Philippines Trade Facilitation Committee. To the audiences, let us welcome Colonel Meliton T. Pascual. Colonel Pascual, the screen is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kusuma. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone. In this morning a session that we have, I will be discussing with you the Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee as approved by the President Duterte recently, last May. And this is under Executive Order 136 on ease of doing business in the Philippines. By the way, I'd like to have some little editorial correction. I am COLL, that's collector, not colonel. I mean, that's military rank. No? But as far as
my sincere...
it's all right, sir. It's all right, sir. No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Because the regional director, they call us in customs as collector because we normally collect duties and taxes. Anyway, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Padopo, sir. As what Deputy Director General Bringas made mention, some of those offenses that has been committed by the government employees to which they belong, the agency that Deputy Director General Eduardo Bringas has been serving is our watchdog, actually. They are the ones who prosecute and bring us in court if there are prima facie case and may even motu proprio. As far as we are concerned in the Bureau of Customs, we normally endorse them to ARTA, their office under Chairman Belhica before. No? I think he just resigned recently and joined the political race in this coming election. Anyway, for our outline this morning, I would like to make some brief history of the World Trade Organization Facilitation Agreement, the Philippine journey to WTO-TFA, the background of the WTO-TFA, the notification categories that we have, the WCO Mercator Program, what have we done so far, and Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee, and the plan of action. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right. in the history, trade facilitation agreement started at the WTO Ministerial Conference in Singapore in 1996, where a mixed group of WTO members requested to undertake exploratory and analytical work on the simplification of trade procedures, where we have this general package on Cancun, that is in Mexico, of course, and the negotiating group on trade facilitation was created. So in 2009, the NGTF issued the first consolidated negotiating documents. The text of the agreement was adopted at the Bali Ministerial Conference in 2013, where members also agreed on the procedure to integrate the future TFA into the WTO agreement. Finally, in February 22, 2017, the agreement has entered into force, where, of course, there is a brief video from the WTO from said event. The Philippines joined the WTO officially started with the Philippines certification of the agreement on October 23, 2016. As part of the commitment of the Philippines to harmonize its local legislation with the TFA, it adopted the measures provided in the agreement in the provisions of Republic Act 10863 of the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, which was enacted in 2016. When the WTO TFA agreement finally entered into force in February 2017, the Philippines has immediately notified the WTO of its implementation categories. To comply with the commitment for the creation of national trade facilitation, BOC also initiated the drafting of an executive order for the creation of the Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee in 2017. Briefly, we'd like to present to you the WTO organization that we have right now. Please. The operator, can we, yes. Yes, that's it. Please. That's it. We have the briefer. All right. So we might as well continue. If there is a brief technical error that we have. In 2018, the draft EO was submitted to DTI and other government agencies involved with trade facilitation for comments and inputs. In 2019, the Bureau of Customs also conducted TFA awareness program for its internal and external stakeholders to properly cascade the provisions of the agreement, meaning within our backyard, we started this awareness program to our organic, that we have already entered into agreement with the Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee. It was signed by President Duterte in May 2021. So therefore, it is but proper that this should be given first to the organic in the Bureau of Customs. And then we cascaded this to our external stakeholders, where we have this from the private stakeholders that we have the brokers, the customs brokers, the facilitators, the consolidators, and everything that is transacting business with the Philippine Customs Bureau. Of course, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. The TFA contains provisions for expediting the movement, the release, and clearance of goods, including goods in transit. It also sets out measures for effective cooperation between customs and other appropriate authorities on trade facilitation and customs compliance issues. It further contains provisions for technical assistance and capacity building in this area, meaning we have invited private enterprise and other government agencies to have put this awareness of trade facilitation that is now being implemented by Philippine Customs and that of the co-chair, the Department of Finance, and the Secretary of Trade. The vice chair, of course, is the Commissioner of Customs regarding this matter. Estimates shows that the full implementation of the TFA could reduce trade cost by an average of 14.3% and boost global trade by up to $1 trillion per year, with the biggest gains in the poorest countries. For the first time in WTO history, the requirement to implement the agreement is directly linked to the capacity of the country to do so. Next slide, please. The WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement includes 3 sections. First is Section 1, which covers measures for expediting the movement, release, and clearance of goods, including goods in transit. Back to the, yes, okay, that's it. Another one, you're right. Section 2 includes the special differential treatment, which allows developing and least developed countries to implement based on their capacity, and Section 3, which requires the creation of the National Committee to facilitate domestic coordination. Next slide, please. The notification categories that we have is based on the capacities of the countries as categorized that follows. For Category A, developing members will implement the measure by February 22, 2017, meaning all AMS members in ASEAN, which of course includes Indonesia and other least developed countries, we have already implemented this in last February 22, 2017, and the LDC last February 22, 2018. Philippines is classified as a developing member, thus its Category A measures were implemented in 2017. For Category B, these are measures that members will need additional time to implement, while Category C members will need additional time and capacity building support to implement the measures. Like in the Philippines, under Category C is this article on the national single window. So we have asked our member countries, even in the Mercator program that we have, to give us until June 30, 2022 for an extension to implement this national single window. Well, next slide, please. Under Category A, there are several articles which we have already implemented that are ready, and of course, we have implemented this already in 2017, from Article 1 to Article 7.7. Next slide, please. See, those are under Categories A that we have already implemented last 2017. Next slide, please. Then we have this pre-shipment inspection. Well, under the this is the most contentious issues that we have. Under the pre-shipment inspection, we know that once you have been given accession to WTO, this will involve valuation issues. So therefore, we remove under 10.5, the pre-shipment inspection, the issue on valuation, but instead it will involve quality and the quantity of the goods that is being inspected in the country of origin. Of course, that will exclude valuation issue because we have already acceded to WTO under Article 7 of Article 7 on the agreement of valuation. So for Category B, next slide please. For Category B, the notification by Philippines include for enhanced controls or inspections and border agency cooperation and rejected goods. So, of course, we have already asked for this, and that has to be implemented last year. So, therefore, it is now being implemented. While Category C includes single window, where I have told you a little earlier, mentioned a little earlier, the implementation was requested for an extension until June 30, 2022. Next slide, please. For other notification categories and Philippine notification, I should say, It has implemented 93.3% measures for Category A, while 5% of measures under Category B, which needs additional time for implementation, and 1.7% of measure is classified under Category C, which is the implementation of single window. Next slide, please. Now, under the WCO Mercator program, to effectively monitor our compliance with WTO TFA, the BOC, or the Bureau of Customs, adopted the WCO Mercator program through a diagnostic activity conducted by the WCO in 2019. The Mercator program was launched by the WCO in 2014 to ensure uniform implementation of the WTO TFA, and it provides tailor-made support that takes into account local conditions and environment for implementing trade facilitation measures. For the implementation of the Mercator program, the BOC has 100% implementation for 15 out of 27 topics, while 10 out of 27 has implementation rate of less than 100%. But more than 50% and 2 out of 27 have implementation process of below 50%. The overall implementation rate of the Mercator program is at 85.94%. Next slide, please. What have we done so far? Here are some of the topics that are 100% implemented under the Mercator program. We have the human resource management, risk management, survey on BOC website, so on and so forth, and awareness of trade facilitation measures that we have. And then, next slide, please. Customs transit and transshipment, where we have procedures on pre-arrival processing. In fact, if you are willing to invest in the Philippines and you wanted to import, we have these procedures on pre-arrival processing, no? Meaning, while the carrying vessel is still on journey in the high seas, you can now process your goods declaration for so long as we have already accepted the e-manifest from the country of origin and then transferred electronically to our gateway in the Bureau of Customs. Therefore, you can already process your goods declaration. You can readily ask your broker, hey, Mr. Broker, please process our import documents now in the Bureau of Customs. And yet, if somebody will ask, hey, the shipment hasn't arrived yet, and yet, I am telling you now, you can now process on a pre-arrival processing for as long as there is already advanced electronic manifest, which were already sent to our gateway in the Bureau of Customs. Now, 10 out of 27 are the topics that have implementation rate of less than 100%, but more than 50% implementation. Next slide, please. Now, 2 out of 27 or below 50% includes the National Committee on Trade Facilitation and BOC Laboratory. With the convening of the PTFC, we expect that the implementation rate will increase. Just yesterday, November 17, we met with our Mercator program operator and DEFCOM San Juan from IAG. They're now contemplating of not only the plan of creation, but there will be a structure that has to be presented for the BOC laboratory that we have. We have already asked assistance and support from the JICA in the procurement of the laboratory equipment that will be put up in the BOC compound. Okay. This progress in TFA implementation are coordinated with the WCO through the BOC's External Affairs Office. By the way, we have the Bureau of Customs External Affairs Office that is dedicated in resolving all challenges, approaches, issues that has something to do with the Bureau that were already presented to our external stakeholders, such as the international affairs on customs procedure and practices. See, that is how we do it. Through this, the WCO is able to monitor the maturity level of the Philippines in the implementation of the TFA. Next slide, please. After the issuance of EO 136, the BOC has updated the composition of its internal PTFC and designated personnel for the PTFC Secretariat. It has also conducted trade facilitation awareness program for BOC employees and external stakeholders as early as 2019, meaning though the executive order is not yet signed and enacted into law, we have been already propagating awareness program of this PTFC that is to be implemented soon. And good enough that we have already done this so far. Okay, so it has also held webinar last June 2 for 2020 for importers, customs brokers, and World Bank representatives to update on the issuance of EO 136. Next slide, please. Okay. The PTFC was created in compliance with Item 2, Article 23 of the WTO TFA, which mandates the creation or designation of a national committee on trade facilitation. Next slide, please. Based on the TFA and with the provisions of EO 136. So EO 136 is the executive order that implements and enacted into law the Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee, with the task of first, facilitate both domestic coordination and implementation of the provisions of the WTO TFA. And second is to streamline and improve customs procedures to reduce cost, which enables MSMEs, well, you know these words, MSMEs came from the Department of Trade and Industry, to participate actively in international trade. Next slide, please. The Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee is chaired by no less than the Secretary of Finance, co-chaired by the Secretary of Trade and Industry, and vice-chaired by the Commissioner of Customs. It is also composed of the Department of Agriculture, the DFA, NEDA, DNR, DOTR, Tariff Commission, BSP, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Bureau of International Trade Relations under DTI, and Bureau of Import Services under DTI, FDA, and PESA. So these are the several government agencies that has something to do with the Philippine Trade Facilitation Committee. Yes, the following are the duties and responsibilities of the PTFC in accordance with the executive order and in relation with the WTO TFA and other trade facilitation commitments. And by the way, we have also cascaded this to our regional level, meaning if there are regional districts of customs, let's say in Cebu, Davao, Cagayan de Oro, Subic, Central Luzon, and in Northern Luzon, we have Sual, La Union, as far as Apari. We have already designated the Collector of Customs in those ports as the chair, and if there are a regional director of the Department of Trade and Industry, they become co-chair. So that is how we cascaded this to the local level under the PTFC, which will include study, propose and coordinate the position, activities or actions of the Philippine government, represent and advance the interests of the Philippines in meetings on the implementation of the WTO TFA and other trade facilitation commitments. By the way, we have to make use of the notice of instrument to WTO, meaning we will inform them that we have already implemented this PTFC under EO 136 as part of the commitment to WTO, so that other countries may know what's going on in the Philippines if they thought of investing here in the Philippines. So they will ask, hey, WTO, what is the present condition now in the Philippines? Do they have this trade facilitation? So WTO will say, yes, they have this trade facilitation already, and it becomes into law, and we can give you copies of this executive order. So that is how, or the purpose or the objective of our instrument of a notification to WTO. Okay? Call on decisions and coordinate with relevant government agencies, submit appropriate and timely reports on the compliance of the Philippines. Next slide, please. Propose to the NEDA board, Committee on Tariff and Related Matters, Trade Regulations, or the CTRM, undertake outreach advocacy, capacity building. This is how we do it. So we have to undertake regional capacity building, webinars. If not webinars, since we are now under level 2 or level 1, we can have this face-to-face interaction with the local industry, even in Cebu, Cagayan de Oro, somewhere in the south, Central Luzon, so on and so forth. In coordination with the Anti-Red Tape Authority, which was made mention by our Deputy Director General Bringas a little earlier, ensure compliance with Republic Act number 11032 or the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act of 2018 in relation to trade facilitation. So we have hitting 3 birds in 1 stone, no? The Anti-Red Tape Authority under 11032, the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Service Delivery of 2018, and in relation to trade facilitation under EO 136. So we are hitting 3 birds in 1 stone. Next slide, please. And then report regularly to the NEDA board, the city elements seek approval on matters relevant to the function of the committee and to the extent consistent with the respective mandates of the member agencies, meaning other member government agencies, to fulfill the commitments of the Philippines to WTO, TFA, and other trade facilitation commitments. Next slide, please. And of course, based on our national trade facilitation committees, this is the proposed structure of the PTFC. We have the PTFC body assisted by the Secretariat, headed by BOC and representatives from other member agencies. Also proposed is the creation of the WTO TFA compliance monitoring TWG, which shall monitor the pending compliances of the Philippines with the WTO TFA with focus on the progress of the NSW. NSW next year, no, June 30, 2022. Thus, may require the creation of sub-working groups for this purpose. We will do that. Next is the proposed TWG on trade policy review, which are review functions of the PTFC and other agencies, and committees on trade facilitation to determine redundancies and gaps in relation to the implementation of existing trade facility measures. Lastly, the PTFC may create ad hoc TWGs based on issues as may be further determined by the committee. The members present today are, of course, some of the stakeholders, meaning the TWD, other government agencies, of our operational work plan to be presented. Of course, we have already presented that in the first quarter of 2022. We'll be doing another presentation to the chair. And finally, of course, I would like to say thank you for all of you for your listening ears. Since we have already only allotted some limited time, then I hope I just have to present to you in a brief but concise manner regarding this. And I have promised Ms. Mercaida that we'll be sending the process flow on each collection district so that you can have it provide and to your stakeholders, to other members, Chamber of Commerce on the industry, the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, to be presented to them the process flow either by NAIA or the National Ninoy Aquino International Airport, or even in the seaport that we have for you to find out the time and motion for the release of your consignment as far as PTFC is concerned. So my friends, thank you very much for your listening ears. I'm happy to be with you this morning and happy to also to coordinate with our facilitator in answering your questions during the Q&A portion. Thank you very much. Magandang umaga. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Pascual, for the excellent presentation. We have more than 70 attendees from Indonesia at the moment, and I'm sure that they learn a lot today from you and also from the previous speakers. So again, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. And let me now invite our third speaker. Our third speaker is a very Filipino but living in Indonesia, and he is Mr. Antonio Chapati, Chairman of the Philippine Business Club Indonesia. Aside from being a chairman of the PIBC, Mr. Antonio Chapati is also the president and director of PT Manila Water Indonesia. He has over 30 years of financial and general management track record in Indonesia, Philippines, and Canada, and has played a major role in setting up and managing new startup companies, as well as expansions and IPO-related businesses. Mr. Antonio Chapati took his master's in business administration at the Ateneo de Manila University and Bachelor of Arts in Economics at De La Salle University. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present you now Mr. Antonio Chapati. Sir, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Bapa Widya Ramanto, charge the affairs of the Republic of Indonesia in Manila. Bapa Kusuma Pradopo, Minister Councilor, Head of Economic Section, Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia. Bapa Laswardi Nasution, Trade Attaché, Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Manila. Attorney Eduardo Bringas, Undersecretary, Anti-Red Tape Authority. Mr. Antonio Meliton Pascual, Chief Customs Operations Officer, Bureau of Customs. Good morning, magandang umaga, salamat pagi, ibu-ibu, dan bapa-bapa, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I was asked to present ease of doing business in the Philippines for Indonesian investors. But before I may start, let me start to introduce the Philippine Business Club Indonesia, or we call PBCI. It is an association representing private sector interests to promote and strengthen business, economic, and cultural ties between the Philippines and Indonesia. PBCI has a working relationship with the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ICCI, and Kadin. Also in the Philippines, collaborations with the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as the Makati Business Club. PBCI also works closely with the Embassy of the Republic of the Philippines in Indonesia, Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in the Philippines, the Philippine Trade and Investment Center in Jakarta, and PBCI is a member of the International Business Chamber comprising of all foreign chambers in Indonesia. Some of the activities that PBCI has done over the years was the launching of the first Philippine-Indonesia Economic and Investment Summit that was done in 2019, where 3 of our secretaries or ministers came to Indonesia, as well as having a meeting with their counterparts here as well. In 2021, we have, even during the pandemic, we continue to have collaborations and interactions with our colleagues in business. And we have done in February 2020, Indonesia Economic Outlook with Kadin as well as the BKPM. And in October, we did the Philippine-Indonesia Intellectual Property Forum for Business. So our Dirjen for IP in Indonesia as well as our Dirjen in the Philippines for IP were the keynote speakers. What is the main value proposition why it is best to invest in the Philippines? And I will itemize it in 9 major aspects of the investments. The first one is demographic sweet spot and rich talent pool. We have young, skilled, educated labor force that is always available in the Philippines. Competitive salary and wage increase. We could be one of the lowest in terms of salaries and wages in the region. Our average minimum wage per month is about $220 US, while in Jakarta, we are almost $300, but of course, much lower in other provinces. Labor attrition, turnover rates, industrial peace. We have low incidences of strikes and demonstrations. Strategic access to key markets and foreign trade agreements in the works. I will dwell with this in more detail agreements that we have with European countries, the United States, ASEAN, and others. Unrestricted movement of critical products and people. The Philippines is one of the countries that did not impose export restrictions during the pandemic. Infrastructure development, the Philippines remain to be robust, and in this current government introduced the Build program to enhance trade as well as ease of doing business. Availability of suitable locations. We have eco-zones. We have eco-zones that are now been all over available throughout the country, as well as the local government waiting for partnerships on this. And lastly, intellectual property protection. Philippines is one of the movers in the intellectual property rights, and who is the chair now for the ASEAN in terms of leading this initiative as well. The Philippines as a demographic sweet spot and rich talent pool. Currently, we have almost 45 million people in the workforce, and that is approximately 40% of our total population of 110 million. We produce an average of 750 million graduates annually across a wide range of disciplines, from education, healthcare, engineering, technology, to name a few. Our workforce is highly educated and English proficient, strongly customer-oriented, highly trainable and fast learning curve, adaptable to universal cultures, and high level of commitment and loyalty. Filipinos are younger compared to the rest of the world. The median age in the Philippines is 25.7 years old. This is equivalent to the age of someone who recently graduated from college. So yes, these are available, and the Philippines is, we have a lot of talents and available workforce for investors to come to the Philippines. As well as, next. Okay. Why do we want to invest in the Philippines? The Philippines has embarked on priority industries for domestic and export markets, namely auto and parts, chemicals, agribusiness, electronics, electrical, shipbuilding and repair, which we need. And we have IT BPM, which is a growing industry in the Philippines, e-commerce, digital economy, transport, and logistics. Next. Investments in the Philippines have continued even during the pandemic. Our foreign direct investments in 2020 alone had an increase of almost 29% to an amount of almost $3.9 billion. What is interesting to note that in the second semester of this year, our FDI have increased to 43% on an amount of $5.6 billion. This led to most foreign investors to really consider the Philippines as a country of investments. Our Board of Investments, which is similar to the BKPM in Indonesia, has approved investments totaling to almost 20.5 billion in 2020 alone. And this is one of the highest investment approvals in the agency's 53-year history. Now, some of the industries that increase to this growth are electricity and gas, finance and insurance activities, real estate, ICT, information communication technology, to name a few. The Philippines has also strategic access to key markets. We have agreements with the European Union to have duty-free access for 6,274 products that are duty-free under what we call the GSP Plus program, or Generalized System of Preferences. Likewise, the Philippines is the only ASEAN country with GSP Plus ratings with them and agreements. We also have duty-free from all industrial products from the European Free Trade Association, as well as GSP agreements access to the United Kingdom, Russia, and Canada. Of course, our 10 ASEAN members that are our key partners in the development of trade and investments in the Philippines, as well as ASEAN partners like China, South Korea, Japan, India, Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong. Next. As mentioned a while ago, infrastructure development for sustained inclusive growth has been a priority of the government. This has started in 2010, but has quadrupled a lot during the administration of the current government and president. We have approval of almost 112 flagship projects from transport, mobility, power, water, information technology, urban development, and renewal. 60 PPP projects has also been approved as of July 2021, which includes solicited and unsolicited projects. This includes expressways, airports, railway roads, ports, hospitals. And this leads us to the golden age of infrastructure in the Philippines. Now, as in any developing countries with vast opportunities, we also need the support of the government. And the government has been willing to give and change policies in order to enhance ease of doing business, as well as creating business opportunities for both local and foreign investors. Next. The government made into law what we call the CREATE Act, which is the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises. It has two key main features. One is the reduction of corporate income tax from 30% to 25% effective 1 July 2020 for domestic corporations, foreign corporations, and non-resident foreign corporations. The key importance as well is that the president has been granted flexibility in granting incentives for highly desirable projects with a minimum investment capital of $50 billion or $1 billion, or at least 10,000 direct local employment generation. The president has the right to approve this and grant this flexibility to foreign investors. Other incentives will be removal of export and nationality biases, menu of incentives as well from income tax holidays, and the rest. Next. The Philippines also enacted the Philippine Innovation Act. This encourages entrepreneurial attitude to stimulate growth in business and removes obstacles to innovations. In order to effectively drive innovation across all areas of government policy, the Act has adopted a whole-of-government approach and through the establishment of National Innovation Council. It also includes new product development, allocation of 1.5 billion pesos revolving fund for innovation, as well as allowing for the banks to allocate 4% of total loanable loans and funds for innovation. Likewise, it eliminates regulatory barriers to innovation and cut red tape to boost innovation efforts. The other act that was approved was Transnational Higher Education Law. This allows foreign higher education institutions to set up education facilities in the Philippines. This has just been recently approved, and this is key to accelerate partnerships between foreign and local universities, increasing access of Filipino students to international quality education standards and degree programs. Next. Next. One of the key policies that the government has approved are, we have policy reforms and initiatives. Ease of Doing Business and Efficiency of Delivery of Government Services Act was approved in 2018. This promotes transparency and simplified requirements and procedures to reduce red tape, expedite business and non-business related transactions in the government as well. And as Undersecretary Bringas mentioned, prescribed processing time has been reduced from 3 days to 7 days and 20 days, depending on how complicated the request is. And what is important is now there is what we call zero contact policy in doing this coordination with the different government units that we have in the Philippines. Executive Order number 127 allows value-added services and internet service providers to have direct access to all satellite systems. What is key also in doing business is Philippine Competition Act, the antitrust competition policy, where the Philippines is very strict in implementing anti-monopoly among corporations. So this will assist the foreign investors to be at least that we don't have that type of monopoly for any type of industry in the Philippines. What is key also is the foreign investment negative list. This is continually being updated. And if the industry that you would want to enter is not listed here, then it is open to foreign investments. We also have the Telecommunication Act, which allows private sector employees to work from workplaces with the use of current technology and telecommunications. This is to assist them, and this event was brought into because of the pandemic that occurred throughout the world. Lastly, the revised Corporation Code of the Philippines, RA 11232, whereby one person now can establish a corporation. And examples of these corporations that foreigners can participate would be IT BPM or business process management companies, internet business, training centers, lending, financing companies, and investment houses, wellness centers, among others. Next. Now, PBCI and our experience here have been in communications and contacts with some of the Indonesian companies here and some Indonesian companies that would like to invest in the Philippines. And they ask us what are the challenges faced when they enter the Philippines. And we advise them that, of course, there are certain challenges that one has to face in establishing a company in the Philippines. And one of them would be the permits and licenses. And of course, this depends on the type of company to set in, whether it's going to be 100% ownership or has to be with has to be a partnership with a local Filipino to comply with the requirements of the Board of Investment. Aside from that, inquiries also have been asked if it is easy to set up a branch office. And our answer is yes. But unfortunately, branch office are limited to sponsorship, advertisement, business meetings, but cannot engage in actual sales. Just like in Indonesia, rep offices cannot also engage in commercial activities. some of the challenges that have been faced by these Indonesian companies is the registration and approval of their products with our FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, which normally takes anywhere as fast as 3 months to a little bit over a year. The second challenges that is faced for foreign investors is the high cost of electricity. The Philippines is the highest tariffs in Asia, which will lead to manufacturing costs to be a little bit high and maybe a little bit less competitive with our Asian neighbors. And lastly, the biggest challenge or hurdle that sometimes becomes an issue is land ownership. Foreign individuals or foreign companies are not allowed to own land in the Philippines. So this is one of the challenges that face foreign investors as well. Next. Now, what are the key advantages of doing business in the Philippines? And of course, I mentioned that in my previous slide, human resources, it's always availability of young, skilled, educated labor force. Our access to US and European markets. Companies establish their business operations in the Philippines as a base to tap the US and Europe countries. And also the Philippines is not under the watch list of the US for over decades now. The Philippines also has robust IP environment, encourages business on registration and patent laws on their brand and their products. Ratification of the RCEP, the Regional Cooperation for Economic Partnership, is a free trade agreement that was just recently signed by 15 member countries. And this is expected to eliminate about 90% of tariffs on imports between its signatories. This will take effect effective July 1, 2022. Next. In summary, the Philippines has highly capable, innovative, commitment, and cost-competitive talent. With strategic market access, the Philippines is positioned as a manufacturing hub destined to other key markets in Asia, Americas, Europe, and the rest of the world at preferential rates through regional trade agreements, FTAs, and GSP+. The Philippines has a superior bilateral policy environment and enhanced infrastructure development. There is a wide scope of business opportunities in manufacturing, agribusiness, infrastructure, and services in the Philippines open to foreign investments. The Philippine government continues to improve its business climate through strategic policy reforms to make it easier to do business in the country and further encourage foreign direct investments into the Philippines. So I invite my Indonesian friends who are thinking of investing in the Philippines, please visit the Philippines. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat and terima kasih for your kind attention.
Maraming salamat po, Sir Chapati, for your very comprehensive presentation. Really, there are many that our exporters as well as our potential investors could learn from you based on your experience so far working in not only Indonesia but other countries. Again, thank you very much, sir. I hope that many questions will be raised after this, and according to my friends here who are with me at the venue, there are already some questions being put on the chat box. Thank you very much again. And ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce our fourth speaker, Mr. Laswardi Nasution. Mr. Laswardi Nasution, my dear colleague at the Indonesian Embassy, he's the trade attaché. He graduated from business study at Charles Sturt University in Sydney and obtained his master degree in international business at Central Queensland University, Sydney, Australia. On January 2008, Pardi joined the Ministry of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia, and from June 2018 until present, he is assigned as trade attaché at the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Manila. His office is just beside my office. And ladies and gentlemen, Pak Ardi, the screen is yours.
Terima kasih Pak Dopi. Thank you. Good morning, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Before I start my presentation, I would like to acknowledge some of the officials from Indonesian Embassy and also our distinguished speaker. The first, Honorable Charge the Affairs of Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Manila, Mr. Widya Rahmanto, selaku Kepala Perwakilan KBRI Manila, and also my colleague and my friends in Embassy, Honorable Economic Minister Counselor Mr. Kusuma Pradopo, Honorable Undersecretary Anti-Red Tape Authority, Attorney Eduardo V. Bringas, Honorable Mr. Antonio Melto Pascual, Chief Custom Operation Officer, Bureau of Customs Philippines, and also Mr. Antonio Capati, Chairman of the Philippine Business Club Indonesia. And the last, I would like also acknowledge my friend, Mr. Macastro, the Secretary General of the Philippine Business Club Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, all of the participants of the virtual seminar is of doing business in the Philippines. First of all, before I start my presentation, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Laswardi Nasution, the Trade Attaché of the Embassy of Republic of Indonesia in Manila. So I probably will mix my presentation since some of our audience here is from Indonesia. So some of my presentation will be in English and the explanation will be also in Bahasa. Today, I would like to deliver a presentation about the business opportunities and strategies in the Philippines. Philippines is on the most important trading partner for Indonesia. In 2020, the GDP of the Philippines was worth around 361.49 billion US dollar and is expected to reach 373 US billion by the end of 2021. With the annual growth of GDP around 3.8%. Philippines is one of the greatest potential trading partner for Indonesia, and luckily the Philippines located very close with Indonesia. Jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, kita bisa lihat bahwa kedekatan ini juga memiliki faktor yang sangat potensi bagi Indonesia dan Philippines, terutama banyak produk Indonesia yang bisa memiliki persamaan dan kemiripan. And as you could also seen on the screen, Philippines has moved to be industrialized country that exporting manufactured products such as electrical, machinery, builder machinery, optical, cinematography, and photographic products that together makes almost half of the Philippine export to the world. Jadi bisa kita lihat beberapa produk Philippines ekspor ke dunia sebagai berikut yang tadi saya sampaikan. However, Philippines is also strong in agriculture, especially edible fruits such as mango, coconut, and banana. For import, Philippines is For import, Philippines is mainly consists of machinery product, iron and steel, mineral fuels that very important to support the Philippine industries. However, Philippines is also consuming cerealia products and miscellaneous edible products. This includes snack and packed food products that we might could explore more, provide and supply Philippines with our quality product. Next. Indonesia and Philippines has a strong and independence in terms of the trade. On Indonesian perspective, Philippines is the 7th largest market for Indonesia that make up to 3.9% of Indonesian total export to the world. Philippines is also the 3rd largest trading partner with surplus trade for Indonesia is after India and USA. In the Philippine perspective, Indonesia is the 5th largest supplier for the import product to the Philippines, with share 6.4 of Philippine total import from the world. Jadi Bapak Ibu bisa kita lihat sama-sama di sini ekspor Indonesia ke Filipina kurang lebih hampir 10 kali daripada ekspor Filipina ke Indonesia, 8 sampai 10 kali. Jadi potensi produk-produk yang kita ekspor sangat tinggi. On the other side, Indonesia also important for the Philippines as Indonesia is the 16th largest market for the Philippines. Export to the world and make up 0.7% of the Philippine export to the world. And next slide. Next, we move to the 10 export commodities from Indonesia to the Philippines. In 2021, motor vehicle remained the top export commodities from Indonesia to the Philippines. Most of the Japanese auto product is set in Indonesia and Thailand, making Indonesia and Thailand become the largest auto industry in the region. Next, we have also coal as the main power supply for the Philippines. Then we have a processed food, and many Indonesian products in this category have entered Philippine market for many years. And they have very strong brand in the country. For example, is Kopiko. Kopi sachet Kopiko 3-in-1 is so familiar and well-known brand in the Philippines. And many people that we met, they will surprise that Kopiko is Indonesian brand. Then we have the palm oil. Indonesia is the largest palm oil producer in the world. And if there is a buyer that looking for the palm oil from Indonesia, you can contact us in Indonesian Embassy. We also exporting cellular phone and printer. This also include in part of mobile phone, printer, where both Indonesia and Philippines become the part of the global supply chains of this manufactured product. Next, we have a paper and tissue product. Indonesia today is also the largest paper and tissue producer in the world. Then we have a cereal and flour in Indonesia. Indonesia is the main sources and exporter for the corn to the Philippines. Most of the corn exported to the Philippines for the livestock feed. Then we have fertilizer, pharmaceutical in the 9th and 10th largest commodity exported to the Philippines. Next slide. In this slide, we can see the main export product from the Philippines to Indonesia. Philippine export is mostly machinery and printer products. As mentioned before, that Indonesia, Philippines is a part of global supply chain on machinery and printer product. We exchanging and have a good cooperation to trade this particular product. Philippines is the copper sources for Indonesia and has exporting around 88 million US dollar of copper to Indonesia in 2021. Plastic is the 4th largest export product from Philippines to Indonesia, followed by spare part, product and tachometer. This paper product and tachometers export is also unique and showed the good cooperation between Indonesia and the Philippines. Philippines is the part of the regional supply chain for the automotive industry in Southeast Asia. And next, Philippines is tobacco supplier for Indonesia, as you can see on the screen. And also, you might aware that Indonesia is a big market for tobacco product, as smoking and cigarette production is common things in Indonesia. Philippines as the second largest producer of coconut is also supply copra and coconut product to Indonesia. Last but not least, Philippines also exporting iron steel and paper product to Indonesia. Jadi Bapak Ibu, beberapa yang tadi saya sampaikan adalah 10 produk potensial dari Indonesia ke Filipina dan juga dari Filipina ke Indonesia. Yang selanjutnya adalah terkait dengan potensial produk, bagaimana menjajaki potensial produk di Filipina. Before expanding your business to the Philippines, you have to know first what is the potential product that we might penetrate the Philippines market. As you can see on this slide, we identify the product into 4 categories, which are excellent product, emerging products, winning products, and losing products. Let's start with the excellent product. This category consists of Indonesia product that has market share more than 25% in the Philippines. For the excellent product, there are 2 products which are coffee sachet and passenger cars. These 2 products are the most biggest export to the Philippines. And the second category is emerging product, which consists of Indonesia that has market share below 25% in the Philippines, but has more than 20 million export value. The product that include in this category are mainly mineral fuels, CPO, miscellaneous edible preparation, iron and steel, machinery, cereal, and fertilizer. We move to the next category is the winning product. Winning product is a category for Indonesia products that experience positive trend in the Philippines, such as monitor, paperboard, tubes, inkjet printing, frozen fish, fillet, tobacco, coffee or tea makers, part and accessories of surveying, and yogurt. And last category is a losing product. The terminology is a bit negative, but it's not meaning losing, but maybe the market is not big. In my opinion, this category should be taken more seriously, considering that this category consists of Indonesia product that experiencing negative trends such as corn, tanker, petroleum gases, natural rubber, cotton waste, iron ore, footwear made of leather, and unglazed ceramics. Next. Speaking of ease doing business, of course, you have to know a few things about ease of doing business in the Philippines. Maybe some of the speaker already touched on this topic before, but let me just repeating some more highlight here, but very general. As you know, to encourage more micro, small, and medium enterprises and foreign investment in Philippines, the Philippine government promulgated the Ease of Doing Business Act in 2018. The Ease of Doing Business law aims to make it easier for business to start operating in the country. The most important measures that the Ease of Doing Business law introduced is automation of the business registration process. Here we have 5 key features introduced by Ease of Doing Business law in the Philippines. The first, faster processing of business permit and license. The Ease of Doing Business law seeks to cut the red tape involved in the business registration and permit renewals. A unified application form will be required for business permit and renewal. A one-stop shop will also establish to house agency involving in starting a business, including treasury, business and licensing office, and zoning office. Second, standard turnaround time for government transaction. What is What this means is that all government agencies have to comply with standard around times for various transactions. This mandate time frames range from 3 to 20 business days, depending on the complexity of the task, which means all applications duly submitted to an agency will be automatically approved if they fail to process the application within the prescribed time frame. And the third is automatic business registration process, which aim to reduce the risk of gain and corruption. All forms will be moved online and digital copies of document will be submitted electronically. Likewise, license and permit can now be printed at home, and this copy shall have the same authority as a hard copy. And then we have an anti-corruption policy where the Department of Information Communication Technology is responsible for development of a central business portal where a business permit can be obtained. I think this already explained before by the colleague from Philippines. So let me just move to the next slide. Now the question is, what is our strategy to expand our business in the Philippines? As you can see on this slide, there are 6 ways that you could do to expand your business, in the Philippines. First, you can see demand. You should be proactive in searching and digging up the comprehensive information about the demands on particular products so that you may acknowledge the opportunities and challenge before penetrating the product to the Philippines. Jadi, Bapak Ibu sekalian, di sini bisa kita lihat apakah ada permintaan dari Filipina untuk produk-produk yang Bapak minta di sini. Kadang-kadang memang kita bisa lihat ada yang produk yang Ibu tawarkan itu potensi, tapi pada kenyataannya permintaan itu tidak ada. Jadi kita harus lebih aktif berkomunikasi, menjalin hubungan dengan pengusaha, apalagi saat ini internet itu sangat mudah diakses, jadi kita bisa berkomunikasi langsung dengan jarak jauh dengan negara-negara lain. And then you should searching up for the product trend in the Philippines to comprehend about which product that is experiencing positive trend and otherwise. Ini kami juga akan menampilkan nanti beberapa produk yang dicari atau diminta di Filipina. Jadi kebanyakan yang kami terima memang banyak sekali permintaan dari Indonesia untuk menawarkan produk mereka di Filipina. Tapi di satu sisi Filipina sendiri mereka sudah ada current atau pembeli yang memang sudah existing. Jadi kesulitan kita di situ, dan disitulah kita harus bisa menjalin hubungan yang baru. Next thing that you have to do is comprehend the requirement before expanding the business to the Philippines. Because it's really important that understanding the law and regulation will ease you to commence the business in the Philippines. Jadi yang saya maksud di sini mungkin kita selain mengetahui daripada aturan dan regulasi, tapi kita juga mengetahui culture daripada Filipina sendiri, bagaimana, apa yang mereka inginkan dari pihak Indonesia, dan itu yang mesti kita pahami. Besides that, knowing your competitor and yourself in 100 battles will make you unstoppable. Through this approach, you might know what is the weakness of your competitor and find the way out to cover that shortfall. Jadi tadi kami menyinggung sedikit produknya Kopiko, Bapak Ibu bisa kita lihat bahwa mereka bisa unggul dengan market share sekitar 50-70%. Kopiko itu produk kopi saset 3-in-1. Kalian mereka bisa mengalahkan Nestle, di mana Nestle merupakan perusahaan multinasional besar di dunia. Kita bisa lihat. Tapi karena mereka tahu bagaimana bisa bersaing di Filipina, jadi mereka lebih unggul. Nah, cara-cara itu yang kita mesti tahu, bagaimana kita bisa masuk ke Filipina dengan mengetahui kompetitor kita. You also need to have a channel distribution. Distribution channel are very important to business as they all allow for the smooth delivery of goods or services to a customer. A channel distribution connect link between the producer and the customer. Nah, ini channel juga penting di sini, terutama bukan hanya mensasar retail, tapi kita juga perlu mensasar warung atau sari-sari. Nah, bagaimana kita mendapatkan distributor yang national wide itu suatu tantangan tersendiri. Yeah. The last thing that you have to do is being proactive, such participating on the trade promotion event, especially in the Philippines, by opening the opportunity for business to introduce what you can offer. Jadi kita harus lebih aktif Bapak Ibu sekalian ya. Jadi dengan kondisi sekarang kan semua bisa serba dilakukan dengan Zoom meeting. Another strategy that we can do is utilizing e-commerce platform to break through the Philippines market. Then this is a question that why? So by utilizing e-commerce platform, it will make things easier, especially when you come to a regulation. For instance, when you sell the product through the e-commerce platform, you are not obliged to comply with some of the regulations, such as this, what we know is a label product and regulated by the government. So it's much more easier, but in terms of the quantity, you just sell it in very few or small, but in terms of the big quantity, you have to, the challenge is you must to comply with so many rules and regulations that apply in certain countries. And then using e-commerce will help you to reach more customers, not only in, but also in some other countries. So social media also very important now, how to utilize your promotion in the other country. Lastly, enhancing the revenue through this online customer base. Considering e-commerce is accessible in every places, as a businessman, e-commerce is good platform to start with. Jadi Bapak Ibu, kita juga bisa melihat dari segala aspek dengan platform e-commerce ini, baik kita menjadi juara di dalam negeri, di domestik kita sendiri, atau juga di negara lain. Jadi banyak cara-cara kita untuk mengembangkan bisnis di dalam negeri maupun di luar negeri. Bukan berarti kita berhasil itu keluar, tapi kadang-kadang kita juga bisa mensasar atau melihat pasar kita sendiri. Itu juga sangat penting. Our office is sometimes got many questions from the exporter in Indonesia regarding how is the regulation to export product to the Philippines. Now I would like to introduce a Philippine National Trade Repository. This website is part of the ASEAN Trade Repository. In Indonesia, we also have Indonesian National Trade Repository, or what we call INSW, Indonesian National Single Window. Also is very accessible for the import and export regulation in Indonesia. Through this website, we can check the regulation for every product based on their HH code. To check the regulation, first we can open the website by access to pntr.gov.ph. You can see on the screen how is the website look like. And then you can click search commodity. Then in the search code keyword column, fill the type of commodity that you want to find. You want to find out about the export and import regulation. It's very, very comprehensive website. Even you can see the steps that the government of Philippines that explain on the website. And the next slide is the next step is to choose according to the H code. As the example next is coffee commodity. Enter to the final page which explain the regulation, requirement, governing bodies, and various things that related to export and import of the product that you are looking for. And for your reference, to start your business in the Philippines, the list of Indonesian product that requested by Philippines buyer and importer as of today, as of now. So whoever join or any businesses coming from Indonesia, you want to explore any opportunities to Philippines, you can check whether your product are matched to the request. If you are Philippine importer, please don't hesitate to contact us in the Indonesian Embassy, so we could connect you to Indonesian trusted buyer and exporter and any other resources. That's all my today presentation. Thank you for your attention. Maraming salamat po sa iyong lahat. And my time and floor, I give back to Mr. Kusuma Pradopo. Terima kasih Pak Dopi.
Terima kasih Pak Ardi. Thank you very much Pak Laswardi for your comprehensive and very informative presentation. I'm sure that our participants in Indonesia will find a lot of useful information from your presentation, and I personally have no doubt, because I know that Mr. Laswardi is one of the most busiest official at the embassy. I know that Pak Laswardi has more than 2 business meetings every day, because it's almost impossible to ask him for a dialogue, as he is always very busy with business meeting. Pak Ardi, thanks again for your excellent presentation. And I think I have accomplished my assignment, and I would like to return the floor to my dearest pretty colleague, Francisca. Francisca.
Yes, Pak. Thank you very much, Pak. Glad that you asked. You call me pretty. Thank you again for all the speakers, and also to our moderator, Pak Radopo. Now, let's move along. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Mark Castro, who will be leading discussions and also Q&A sessions. Mr. Mark Castro is the Secretary General of Philippine Business Club in Indonesia. Sir, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Francisca, and thank you everyone to our audience here. We're about 85 of us, aside from the online streaming that we have. I'd like to thank the Indonesian Embassy and the Trade Office as well, and including the Economic Section, for conducting this important meeting in highlighting the Philippines as a trade and investment destination for Indonesia. I think for next year, we should also do a reverse for our Philippine importers who would like to penetrate the Indonesian market. And as you know, the Indonesian government and the Indonesian embassy have been focusing on the trade surplus that we have between both countries, and they would really like to encourage Philippine investors and traders as well to come into Indonesia. But focusing now on the Philippines, we have many Indonesian importers here, many Indonesian exporters that are looking at the Philippine market. And I'd like to thank our Director General for ARTA, the Anti-Red Tape Authority, which has really been crucial in jump leaping the status of the Philippines in ease of doing business ranking in the world. So thank you very much. Now let's begin our Q&A, because we only have about 40 minutes before lunchtime in the Philippines. As you know, we're an hour behind, so we're okay here. Let's start with a question coming from Sukofindo. Sukofindo is one of the oldest testing agencies in Indonesia, and they would like to address this question to Mr. Pascual. They plan to open a branch office in the Philippines, and they would like to have more information from the Bureau of Customs how to get the Accredited Cargo Surveying Company, or ACSC, from CACSC. Mr. Pascual, your comments on this? Oh. Can you hear me? Okay, Mr. Pascual. So Sukovindo would like to open a branch office in the Philippines, and they would like to have some guidance on how the BOC can provide the Accredited Cargo Surveying Company. Can we unmute Mr. Pascual, please?
Francisca,
Hindi po.
can you? There. Okay.
What kind of business that they're going to put up in the Philippines, sir?
It's an inspection company. It's like SGS from
surveyor.
Switzerland. Yes, yes. And
Survey company.
Indonesia, Sukupindo is the oldest one in the country.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Go
So
ahead.
what they have to do, inspection company for cargos for export and import. All right. What they have to do is prepare a letter of their intent to be part of this surveyor in the Philippines to the Assessment Operation Consultative Group, AOCG, under DEPCOM EJ Dibuco. They have to prepare a letter of intent to join the surveyor here in the Philippines. And they will be given checklist to comply. Then afterwards, other than accreditation for being surveyor of the port, they have their counterparts also in abroad. Otherwise, if they do not have their counterparts abroad, they cannot give some justice for inspection for PSI from, let's say, Indonesia. If they are not accredited in Indonesia and the goods are coming to the Philippines, what happens then? They cannot issue LPSR or load port survey report, but instead it will be inspected here upon discharge. Question is, they cannot exercise the practice of inspection and surveyor. So it is important that they have their counterparts abroad anywhere in the world, because goods are coming from anywhere. So they have to be inspected, especially if these are bulk or break bulk cargos and not containerized cargos, for inspection before they could be loaded on board the vessel. Now, they will have the Philippine Customs under AOCG, under Assessment Operation Coordinating Group, DEPCOM Dibuco is the one in charge, will now receive all this LPSR so that if goods are to be discharged either in Port of Cebu, the LPSR, this load port survey report, will be forwarded to Port of Cebu, so that the collector of Cebu, Port of Cebu, is aware and awaiting for the discharging of the goods, and they will import the importer that they have received the copy of the LPSR. So there will be no violation whatsoever as far as bulk or break bulk cargos on surveying. That will be very, very easy, simple, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But Mr. Pascual, as a follow-up question,
Yes.
they also are looking at having a collaboration with Philippine inspection companies. And if there is a list that they can access so that they can meet with these local testing companies, and if they are ACSC accredited as well. So I think they really want to, establish a presence in the Philippines.
If they wanted to, if I were them, why should I ask somebody to join me? But if I can stand alone, that would be better. Because there are several accredited surveyor in the Philippines. We have Veritas, SGS, Intertech, Cotecna. There are, I think, only 4 of them are accredited by BOC. They are not related whatsoever. So if I were, let's say, for instance, XYZ company, probably I can ask them what did they do, how come that they are being accredited, but not merely joining them or joint venture. But if I can stand alone, why not?
Thank you very much.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sukupindo, I hope you heard the reply from Mr. Pascual. I think with your status and history and track record, you can stand alone in the Philippines as well as a branch office. Now, this next question is addressed to Mr. Tony Capati and Mr. Pascual again. They would like to raise a question regarding the CREATE Acts, the tax incentives there. Is the tax incentives applicable for completely built-up ship which was bought from Indonesian private shipyard companies? Because in addition to this question, the ship that was bought from Indonesia will be used for procurement projects conducted by the Philippine government. As you know, Indonesia is also a major shipbuilding country in ASEAN, at least. Go ahead.
Okay. Mark, the law, the CREATE Act is intended for foreign companies and our local companies to be set up in the Philippines. And in this regard, the ship will have been manufactured or produced in Indonesia. Now, but if the ship is done in Indonesia, I think they should check with the concerned government agency because it might be duty-free already. So they have to do this. And of course, shipping is under the investment priority plan of the Philippines, but this is a procurement. So we really have to look into the agreements that was done between these agencies. And as well, maybe it's already duty-free. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. On the part of customs, sir, with your permission, what they have to do is, I subscribe with the statement that they should coordinate with the government agency that has something to do with the procurement, with the permit, with the public conveyance. And I would like to say that they have to go to Marina, Maritime Authority, to inquire about the status of this vessel, whether they are to be included under the CREATE Act of the National Internal Revenue Code. And if so, then that could be endorsed to the Department of Finance. So the Department of Finance, assuming it was given a favorable action, once the carrying vessel or the vessel that becomes commodity arrive at the particular port, BOC will be informed by the Department of Finance that this falls under this executive order so-and-so, under CREATE Act number something like this. So customs will not even bother to collect for as long as there is already endorsement from the Department of Finance stating that, Mr. Commissioner, you don't have to collect duties and taxes on this commodity because they are covered by this such exemption. And we can always indicate that under the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act under Section 800. So we will try to follow the subsections under Section 800 where this vessel, watercraft, will fall for such exemption. Although we knew that this is exempted, still, we will require them to produce an endorsement from the Department of Finance, especially from the Tax Exempt Division. Especially so that they were only, I think, given 5 years for the prescription that are given holiday, tax holidays. No? After 5 years, they can either sell this vessel, dispose them accordingly. Then customs will also get into the picture that they will have, if just in case they did not pay duties and taxes once it arrived, but this time they have to pay duties and taxes, and whoever the beneficiary or the third party involved will have to pay duties and taxes. If assuming they are exempt, the vessel is exempted from duties and taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question for all our speakers, for your comments. There's an interesting question here. In what sector, maybe Ardi, you can answer this. In what sector can there be a 60-40 arrangement in favor of the foreign investor? So I think it has to do with equity share on 60-40.
You mean to say that 60% Filipino and 40%, or the other way around?
The other way around, sir.
Okay.
Director General.
So, as provided for in the Constitution, there are certain sections. For example, if you engage in media, but if the industry or the business that will be entered into is a restricted business, then the 60-40 rule will apply, meaning the 60 for the Filipino investment and also 40% to the foreign investment. But we have a grandfather rule, which, for example, you have created already a corporation, and with that, that corporation will also invest in another corporation. That's going around the 60-40 requirement. But all the other investments, there will be no restriction as to the investment. No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, any other insights? I think it's between 60% to 100% or whatever industry where in a foreign investor can come in with a majority share outside of the negative list.
Mark,
Yes.
let me add something. President Duterte signed into law in 2018, the different categories for investing in the Philippines. And that's from whether it's going to be zero for non-participation to 25% to 40, up to 40. Now, beyond that, we recommend that the potential investor should look at our foreign investment negative list, which we can send the link. That's https://sec.gov.ph and then /FAQs. And we can get all of the categories whereby that are not stated on the negative list. So yes, there are from 60 to 100% open to foreign investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pa Aldi or Mr. Pascual, any comments?
Thank you, Pa. Yes. Oh, yeah. I allowed my colleague from the custom to speak first. Yes, sir, you might answer first.
Okay, as far as BOC is concerned, it doesn't matter whether the corporation that you have entered into will be accredited or not. For as long as the name of the company is clean and no derogatory information whatsoever, and they are registered under the DTI or even in the SEC, then customs can accredit that and go with the smooth flow of processing on the importation that they would like to. Again, for so long as their goods that they have imported are not restricted and not absolutely prohibited, we have to consider that as freely importable goods, then we can allow transaction with this kind of firm. That is the ease of doing business in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you. Pa Aldi?
Thank you, Pak Castro. Actually, from my side, I don't have any issue for the investor who would like to come to the Philippines, but the main concern that coming from the exporter, actually, when they trying to find the partner in Philippines, they must to find very credible buyer or importer, which is they have a financial capacity to fulfill the commitment of the 60%. So because as my understanding, there is a difficulty for the seller from Indonesia to go into the Philippines market directly. They must to have a joint venture or partnership with the local partner, which is to build this partnership. They must to have the 60-40% requirement, which is the 60% is really hard to find. Something like that, Pa. Thank you.
Thank you, Pa. Because I noticed Pa Donnie Bima of BNE is here with us, and maybe we can discuss. I remember in 2014, I don't know the latest update, that foreign banks are now allowed up to 60% or sampay 100% ownership in the Philippines. So is that still correct?
Yeah, hi, Pa Mark Castro. Yeah.
Hello, Pa.
Okay, thank you. I think the government regulation for opening overseas branches in Philippines is still open in discussion. I will check whether the maximum share that allowed whether this sale is still allowed until 100% or not. But I think we have a plan to expand our business in more Asian countries, opening our branches. But I think Philippines will be one of the potential country regarding the potential export from Indonesia. And currently, we are focusing on scaling up our SMEs customers to export to international market, since we have 6 overseas branches. In Asia, we have in Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Seoul, and then New York and London. Next year, we will open in some other countries, including more countries in Asia. I think there's a possibility, but to have the joint cooperation with Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Terima kasih. So that when you open a branch BNE in Manila, I don't have to be double charged for banking services. I just use my BNE ATM, you know.
I see. Okay, noted, sir.
Well, I'd like to call on the president of the Philippine Business Club Indonesia in the Philippines, Mr. Mel Regalado, to give us insights on how to assist the Indonesian companies to enter the Philippine market.
Okay, hi, Mark, and all to our respectable guest speakers. I'm Mel Regalado. I'm now the heading TMM Asia Consulting. So what we're doing actually is we're helping facilitate Indonesian companies in penetrating Philippine market, and vice versa too. We also have our own company set up in Indonesia. We liaise with our client to make sure that the penetration or for them to enter Philippine market is quite smooth, you know. So be it we help them, be it from the registration of the companies, advising them on structures, and what we see is that Philippines as a business environment welcomes really investors. We may be hearing a lot of some negative things, but in actuality, those things can, if we know the rules and we know how to navigate, through those rules, things becomes easier in navigating through the registration, navigating the legal requirement. So there's no shortcut, but we know now that the Philippine government also are, what do you call this? Their concentration really is to assist, and make it easy for investor to come into the Philippines. There are a lot of steps already being taken care of to reduce the red tapes, As a matter of fact, even now there's more transparency because of the online applications and online verification. So to all our friends in Indonesia, we can assist you also in your needs to facilitate, entering Philippine market, and vice versa as well. Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Thank you, thank you. I can see a lot of some of our audience members here that are in the cosmetic sector. And I think the cosmetic section is a very strong product of Indonesia that I think that we can assist in penetrating to the Philippines. What do you think about that, Pa Ardi? Muted, Pa.
Sorry, Pa. I was missed the question.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of cosmetic players from Indonesia, right? They want to penetrate the Philippines. Now, maybe we can give them an overview of how they can do it because they're asking for some guidelines. Like, do they need to go through FDA? Can they just find a distributor or a partner? What if they go it alone? I know, Marta Tilar is being distributed in the Philippines, but it's rather inactive in terms of how aggressive they are in Indonesia. Mustika Ratu, also another product that can enter the Philippine market. So what can they do to fast track their entry?
Thank you, Pak Mark. Actually, from my side, I would suggest the seller from Indonesia to get the right local partner first, or they have to create a partnership. And after they have a local partner or partnership with the Philippines, they can move forward to register the product to FDA. But this is the most challenging situation, because when you register some what I call is sensitive product like cosmetic and drugs, it takes a bit longer compared to food and beverage. Normally, food and beverage, the process to register this product is around 3 to 6 months. They can release if there is no other obstacle, there and any other requirement of document, additional requirement, it will be finished around 3 to 6 months. But for the cosmetic and drugs, normally it's around about normally is 1 to 2 years. It's very common. But when I check to some agencies in Indonesia, we also do the same. Drugs and cosmetic takes a bit longer to analyze the processing to be approved, something like that. And but on top of that, I also have a concern when we register in FDA here, but you are there is a additional document that required from the FDA that you must to restart the registration from the beginning again. That this is what the most the major concern that currently I receive from the buyer and the seller from Indonesia. But I don't know whether this is very common procedure that whenever there is additional document that needing to be submitted, so the previous application will be failure, then you have to restart from beginning again. But anyway, this just stand guided to what the government of Philippines. We just seek some clarification sometime. Thank you, Pak Max.
Thank you, Pa. Dear Director General Bringas, you were saying?
Yes, let me just clarify something. Earlier, our representative from BOC stated that the one who, chairman who already resigned, actually, he was referring to Chairman Greco Bellica, who is the chairman of the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission. But our secretary, he is still the secretary of ARTA, still the head of ARTA. Second point would be with regard to the registration with the FDA. I think looking forward, the periods that 1 year to 2 years, that's common before. But we have already filed about 630 counts against the officer involved in the FDA for delays in the issuances of permits of drugs. So with regard to the cosmetic industry, would like to invest here in the Philippines, if there is any problem that will be encountered by them with regard to the registration with the FDA, just kindly inform us. And that's the job of the Anti-Red Tape Authority. So actually, any other, any and all business-related transaction, just inform us. So you can find just either check us out at the Facebook or at our website, and then we will act accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Jen. So I hope to our audience, you are listening to that because the Anti-Red Tape is a very strong government institution that's now really waking up all the other agencies that you will need to get into your investment path or trading path in the Philippines. Yes, Mr. Mel Regalado, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned about cosmetic industry. That's one thing that I would like also to touch base because number one, we know that we have a lot of big successful cosmetic industry in manufacturers in Indonesia. Mustika Ratu, you know, the other one is, what do you call this?
Marta Tilar.
Marta Tilar, yes. And they really made a lot of success, especially during the first Asian financial crisis. One thing we should note is that their quality is quite good, and Filipino and Indonesian share almost the same characteristics on skin, physical characteristics. So those things can, the cosmetics that they're having. Also, Wardah is also another successful company in Indonesia, catering basically also to Muslim part of the population, where in Philippines also have, especially in the South, we have a lot of Muslim sisters who are, you know, possible users of this Wardah. So these are the potential in Indonesia. Cosmetics is quite big in Indonesia. Now, when it comes to FDA, I understand it is true that there was indeed an improvement in the speed of processing. We saw that also in the last year and a half, 2 years or a year and a half. There was indeed a speed up in the approval process. In cosmetics, it's also complicated, really, because of the various variant in cosmetics. You know, when you talk about lipstick, you have so many different colors. So that complicates a lot of things, as opposed to food. When you have only sardines, you already know what type of sardine it is. Even if you pack it in 300, 400, 500 milliliters or grams, it's the same content. But when it comes to cosmetics, there's just so many variants. So, but again, that we should not discourage our Indonesian investor, because the Philippine government has really looked into this matter, and they have improved so much. And it doesn't stop there. I know there's a commitment to further improve the processing, speed up the processing approval. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, thank you. Spardy is a very good telecom supplier, and with the now aggressive expansion of Philippine telcos, we now have 3 players. We're mirroring now the common tower or tower bersama in the Philippines. What do you think is the space of Indonesian players to participate in that market? Because we have several Filipinos who used to work in telcos in Indonesia who are now back in the Philippines. And I think, it's an opportunity for that.
Pak, if I may, Pak, I still discussing something else before. Do you mind to repeat the question again, Pak?
Yeah. It's just about the telco space in the Philippines. What do you think has been your feedback for telco players in Indonesia to participate here, particularly the tower installation, tower bersama, those kind of areas?
Okay, Pak. Actually, we have a request by one of state-owned company in Indonesia to be that actually they want to expand their market into Philippines. The name of the company is Indonesian National Satellite, Pak. Indonesian National Satellite. They are coming to the embassy, and I was trying to facilitate the communication between this state-owned company with some agencies in Philippines. But the problem is there no feedback until now. They're trying to open satellite market in Philippines, which is having collaboration between Indonesia and Philippines. So we can use one satellite, but we share the utility. The satellite itself is very useful for the people, for the people of Philippines that are not accessible for using the telecommunication services. And so in the meantime, they just talking with the agencies is IT, the ITC, and I connect them with the ITC, but at that time there is no person who can entertain the company. So I hope that your assistant, it will be very appreciated on this. And I also welcome to any Filipino who wants to connect them with any relevant agencies, because as my experience here, in some remote area, it's very difficult to get the
Signal.
signal.
Yeah.
So
I think this is also the technology that was used to cover maritime, right? Fisheries. Also
yes,
satellite, right? To be able to see.
Yes. Also, they recommend the government in one village to have one satellite for using by almost 500 household. So this 500 household is able to use the internet, to use the communication even in the remote area. But so far there is no one interested to that. But if ever some of the agency in Philippines are willing to meet with them, I can help and facilitate the communication. Thank you, Pak Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pa, because that's really a technology here in Indonesia that's very apt for an archipelagic country like the Philippines as well. I've seen it work when I was invited by the Ministry of Maritime Affairs. So it's finding the right channel in the Philippines. I think we have here the anti-red tape. So these things can move fast, you know, and we have technology experts as well, like Mr. Jan Terenal and Mr. Joey Binko, you are here. So I think these things can be facilitated. And for our cosmetic players who are here, looking for the right partners in the Philippines, I think you can get in touch with Mr. Mel Regalado. Or if you're in Indonesia, the Philippine Business Club of Indonesia is here. We can assist you and connect you to the right channels. And our first step is usually with the Department of Trade that is attached to the Philippine Embassy here. So Mr. Tony Kapati is here for that. To our audience, if you have any more questions for 11:48, we have a few more minutes to entertain some of your questions. Please feel free to post it on the chat room or speak up. Our speakers, if you have any other insights you would like to share to guide our Indonesian guests here in how to enter the Philippine market. Silakan pa. Muted.
Yeah, if I may be allowed. No? So far as entering the Philippine market is concerned, actually we are in the forefront of implementing use of the TradeNet system, and I think the OF and the POC is already considering this. This is a single window approach for trade, no, by between the ASEAN countries. So that will be also what we anticipate in the near future. And in addition to that, as I stated earlier, you want to enter to just check the particular department or national government agency who is in charge, no? For example, for the TTI, and check, look at their citizens charter, because all requirements will be there stated. All the fees that need to be paid will be there, the responsible person, and then also in addition that so that if you have already complied with all the requirements and the period also will be stated there, whether it is a complex or seven working days, or it is simple transaction 3 working days, or it is a highly technical 30 days. So if they go beyond those days, you can go to us directly, you know. I think Dom, can you share to us the contact numbers and contact emails of our office that we can attend to them directly? You know? Our office will attend to them directly. So with that, I think that's how we make things faster. So that any problem later on, just look at the citizens charter of each agency that you will be dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Jen. Thank you very much for your hard work. Mr. Johnny Osadi, who is in the telco satellite industry, just reach out to the numbers that will be shared here. Reach out to Pa Agdi. We can also connect you with PBCI and Mr. Mel Regalado. We can find you the appropriate partners to talk to in the Philippines. So whether you're in Jakarta or in Manila, we're accessible for that. Any other insights, Mr. Kapati, before I close our Q&A portion?
Thank you, Mr. Mark. I think there's a question from Pap Budianto. It says, Mr. Antonio Kapati, in Indonesia, how do you see the ease of doing business in Philippines compared to Indonesia? Pabundianto, I would probably say that's almost the same. You know, we go to the different process of permits and licenses. Challenges that we face in FDA is similar to what we experience as well in BPO. But again, as what you mentioned, the key is really finding the right partner that will help you navigate through all of this. You know, but doing it alone, doing it online, it's really going to be a very big challenge. Now, today we heard from Undersecretary Bringas, and that's very good news. And I think that will speed up the process. And then, because of the anti-red tape, maybe that will probably help us ease the processing time for FDA registration for products, which is really a big challenge, even for not only for Indonesians but other countries. Challenges in registering the products with FDA and have it approved. But I think with the commitment of our Undersecretary, they will give us access to see how we can fast track this. In Indonesia, the challenge we have as well is finding the right partners. But once you find them, ease of doing business becomes much easier. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Mark.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to give back the screen now to Ms. Francisca. Thank you very much to our speakers and to our audience. Ms. Francisca, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much for all the speakers for the fruitful discussions. And I also want to convey our highest appreciations to Mr. Macastro for leading the discussions. And thank you everyone for attending today's seminar. If you have any further questions and for coordinations, please contact the economic sections of the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia through email economy.manila@kemlu.co.id.
You're muted, Francisca. Muted.
All right.
There you go.
Okay. For further questions and coordinations, please contact the economic sections at the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia through email economy.manila@kemlu.co.id, and I will put our email address in the chat box. And I saw here Arta already put their email address. Participants could also email to them if there are any other questions that they want to mention. All right. On behalf of the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Manila and our presenters here, thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everyone. See you in the next event. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Terima
Mark.
kasih banyak.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Oh,
Everyone.
thank you so much,
Stay healthy.
speakers.
Thank you.
Yusek, maraming salamat po.
Ya.
Keep safe, keep safe
Terima kasih
everyone.
banyak. Maraming salamat.
Keep safe, sir. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po.
Pak Ardi, terima kasih.
Ini Bapak Tony, Pak Mark.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Terima kasih Pak Dopo. Sampai ketemu lagi Pak. Sampai jumpa.